So throughout this film, I couldn't help but think throughout the entire thing, we're looking at the next James Bond. Maybe not the next James Bond, but somewhere in Henry Cavill's future, I'm almost 100% sure he will be playing James Bond at some point before he dies. So this film is definitely proof that if you go into a film with managed expectations, you can definitely come out pretty entertained. And that's kind of the case with this film. Man from U.N.C.L.E. is actually a film that I've been kind of keeping a close eye on with the trailers that have come out over the past few months, going all the way back to, I believe, the beginning of the year. They released the first trailer for this, and I noticed that everything was very stylized. It kind of had Guy Ritchie's thumbprint over everything. Guy Ritchie usually tends to be a little bit more style versus substance, and looking at his more recent films, I haven't been too impressed with a lot of his more recent work. Sherlock Holmes being the most recent films that he's done. I didn't love them, but I didn't hate them at the same time. I just thought they were okay. So with this, I went in somewhat optimistic because, again, the trailers were really solid for the film. I did like this film quite a bit. It was very entertaining. This is a case where a film being more style versus substance, I think, benefited the film just a little bit more. Every now and then, I think you run into a film where you can have something that's over stylized like this, but with a lot of unique camera angles. He got the look of the 60s down pretty good, and I think you can turn out a fairly good film versus it being more substance and more plot driven. This was more style with a very basic plot. The film stars Henry Cavill playing CIA agent Solo, Armie Hammer playing Russian operative Elia, Alicia Vikander playing the third wheel Gabby. The film is essentially United States and Russia combining forces with these two agents to try and track down a criminal organization to try and stop them from gaining highly enriched uranium so that way they can build nuclear weapons. And that's essentially the basic plot of the film. We have these agents working together to try and track down this criminal organization. They're trying to constantly one them up and put their minds together to try and figure out what they're going to do next. Going into the cast, this was a solid performance from the main cast. Henry Cavill, Armie Hammer, and Alicia Vikander, I thought were all strong in this film. This seems to be a pretty big year for Alicia Vikander. Coming off of Ex Machina, this is another strong performance from her. She has a little bit of a different kind of style to her, something that's a little refreshing if you ask me. Henry Cavill, on the other hand, coming off of Man of Steel, I thought this was a really strong performance from him. He's picking the right roles to try and show his versatility outside of playing Superman. And believe it or not, I think that this is a guy who eventually will go on to do bigger and better things, possibly even bigger than Superman. I think Henry Cavill is just that good of an actor, and I think eventually he'll kind of find his stride, and we'll see him in a series of good films back to back to back for quite some years. Armie Hammer, on the other hand, I think this was a solid performance from him. I look forward to what he does next, coming off of, I believe, The Lone Ranger. I liked him a whole lot in The Social Network. I thought he was really solid in that. I think he probably should have got nominated for an Oscar. I think he possibly could have won for said Oscar if he were nominated for it. But ultimately, it's been a lot of bad films after The Social Network. So it was good to see him in this. It was refreshing. He was good in it. Hopefully the next film that he does decide to pick, he's at least as strong in that film as he was in this one. Going back into the style of the film, that's something that I wanted to highlight. Really noticed it from the trailers, actually, how different this film just looks. It's kind of like a cross between the Ocean series and James Bond. And there's actually a lot of James Bond shots early on in the film, and I really didn't enjoy that. Again, throughout this entire film, I couldn't help but think at some point in time, Henry Cavill is probably going to be playing James Bond. Now that Henry Cavill's put on some weight and he's become a little bit of a better actor, man, I mean, that James Bond role would be perfect for him. But then again, if this film ends up making a lot of money, I can't say that I wouldn't mind seeing him come back in another Man from U.N.C.L.E. film, because I really did enjoy this film. It was very entertaining. Another positive with this film was the action. The action was definitely well choreographed, directed very well as well. I'm not a huge Guy Ritchie fan, but I think he nailed a lot of things with this film, and the action was one of them. The style combined with the action, everything just flowed well. All the action stunts were believable. They all look real. They had that nice punchy weight to them. I really enjoyed the action in this film. Another thing was the sound accompanying the action. It definitely complemented the action, and the sound had that also very weighty feel to it, something that I really enjoyed in the film. But overall, it was a nice little packaged, entertaining action flick with solid performances. Again, it's an action film, so there's always going to be a couple negatives that I have to point out with them. The shooting, which I just pointed out in my Mission Impossible review. When the enemies shoot, they can't aim, and it drives me insane that they can't aim. When you are shooting an assault rifle at someone and they're like 10 feet away from you, one of those bullets should hit you, and they never can aim. There's a scene in this film that's probably about midway through where Hammer and Cavill are on this boat trying to get out of this facility, and there's a larger boat behind them, and they're kind of at this angle where the larger boat's looking over the smaller boat, and they're firing a machine gun at the smaller boat that they're trying to get away in, and they don't hit them, but I believe just one time. So they essentially get out of the boat and escape pretty much scar-free. For all intents and purposes, I think they acquire a few scars, but they didn't get shot, which is, I know it sounds weird. I want someone to get shot, but I feel like there needs to be a more creative, clever way to do that, with either having the hero take a bullet and being able to just walk it off, or just have it creatively so that way they maybe just lose their guns and they're not able to shoot for some mysterious reason. I have no idea how you would do that, but I do know it completely takes me out of the experience when, you know, you're 10 or 15 feet away from someone and you can't shoot them. But when it comes to the good guy being able to shoot all the bad guys, it takes 1 or 2 bullets and they have 100% accuracy 100% of the time. Another one would probably be the plot, more specifically the villain. This is your traditional mustache twirling villain. Not very well fleshed out intentions. Bad for the sake of being bad, if you will. We don't really understand exactly why they want to do what it is that they want to do. Obviously, there's a war backstory to this, but we don't really get into any type of character development regarding any of the villains, why they specifically want to set out to do whatever it is that they want to do. They go into history and they create a story off of realistic events and real events that have happened already. And that was kind of cool. I like how they did that. I know the television show back in the 60s did something similar. I've never seen an episode of it, but I am familiar with it. And that's kind of what this film did, essentially. Obviously, I wanted a little bit more fleshed out villain. I love my villains. I love villains arguably better than heroes. So anytime there's a good villain in the story, I think that just makes the film that much better, in my opinion. But other than that, this is definitely an entertaining film, worth going to see. I definitely recommend you go see it. And if you guys like this, go ahead and give me some thumbs. And if you guys really like this, go ahead and give me some subs. Look forward to my NWA review, aka Straight Outta Compton, coming in a few days. I'm going to be working on that as well. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.